Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Millionaire Mentor Method podcast with me, your host, Krystal, also known as the most famous woman in the world. So today I wanted to talk about how to overcome stage fright, which could be speaking in front of an audience, presenting an idea in a meeting, or potentially performing in front of an audience, anything like that, whether that's a smaller setting or a bigger setting. So even if it's a small room and there's only 5 people in it, a lot of people struggle with speaking up and presenting your ideas, coming from, a place of anxiety and fear, or back in the days, it used to be called shyness. I don't really hear people using the word shy anymore for some reason. But I have been performing on stages since I was about 12. I went to an acting school way back in the days called Beverly Hills Acting Studio. So I got a very, very early introduction to how to perform in front of an audience, how to be comfortable on camera and everything like that. But I'm aware that not everybody in the world had that opportunity, and most of us have not been introduced to that particular skill in our lives. But I want to present the perspective that even if you are not necessarily a performer, or even if you're not necessarily trying to become a public speaker, being able to slowly develop your skill in public speaking and becoming more confident in speaking in front of groups of people only adds value to you, and it adds value to you in ways that I promise you won't even. The ROI on that is exponential, and sometimes we can't see the benefits of adding skills until years goes by, and then things kind of add up and things start taking shape and opportunities start coming your way that you may not have ever expected. Like for me, when I was, let's say, just graduating high school and going into college and all that stuff and just starting my professional life, I was definitely never, ever thinking of becoming a professional speaker. That was not on my radar, nor did I have any interest in doing that. I just wanted to be a guitar player. But now at the age of 37, I can say that I've spoken at a handful of times at different venues, a couple of them being very prestigious places like UCLA and USC. And those were opportunities that I definitely would not have gotten if I most likely didn't already have, if I hadn't already previously been building up this skill of being comfortable on stage for, 2 decades plus. So my number one advice to how to get up on stage, or not even on stage, just in front of people and be confident, is this. Number 1, get over yourself. So number 1, you have to realize most people are not worried about you. Most people are thinking about their own life. They don't care how your hair looks. They don't care what you're wearing. They don't care if you stutter. They don't care if you say They don't care if you mispronounce a word. They don't care most of the time, even if you say, if you get stuck in whatever you're saying, and you can literally say, hang on a minute, pause, and look at your notes. Literally no one is going to, it's not the end of the world. No one is going to suddenly judge you, and and then an army of barbarians are going to come and you're going to die. All of the fears that we have when it comes to public speaking or performing on stage, being in front of people, they come from a place, well, 2 things. One, they come from a place of subconscious narcissism, which is not realizing that you're really not that important in most people's life. Like, they might really like you. They might think you're really cool. They might look up to you. They might really be enjoying what you're saying at that moment. But when they go home, they're worried about their own shit. They're worried about their kids and their wife and their husband and their bills and their struggles and all of that stuff. They're not thinking, oh, Krystal stuttered in the meeting today. They're just not thinking of that stuff. So if you can just remember that will take out, I hope that will take out most of the anxiety, first of all, right there. And then another thing that we have to realize is that our human brain has been largely unchanged for millennia. And during the period of time that our brain was evolving, and this goes back to evolutionary biology. And if you don't know what evolutionary biology is, well, I encourage you to look up a guy, and not just a guy, an amazing scientist named Richard Dawkins. And actually, I should really know this, if it's Dawkins or Dawkins. But honestly, I always forget because I think of Stephen Hawking, and then there's Richard Dawkins. And no, it's Richard Dawkins. Yes, Richard Dawkins. But those two, I always get confused. But, and hey, there you go. I just messed up a prominent scientist, actually the preeminent scientist's name, and I'm just keeping it moving, right? I didn't even Google it. Like, you can look up evolutionary biology, Richard Dawkins, and you'll open up a whole new world for yourself. So anyways, evolutionary biology is basically just looking at human behavior and psychology and sociology through the lens of how did this behavior benefit us as a species millennia ago when we were evolving in our particular ecological niche. And so, for example, and I look at most human behavior, even in my daily life, I almost always look at it through this lens because it makes so much sense once you understand what it is. But when it comes to public speaking or performing in front of groups of people, our brain actually perceives eyeballs looking at us as a potential life-threatening event. And it is hard it's challenging, it's cognitively challenging for our subconscious brain, which is, according to our subconscious brain, it thinks that it's still on the African savannah and a lion can jump out at any moment and eat it, right? So when we are standing in front of a group of people and they're all looking at us, our brain's first initial reaction, the subconscious reaction, is to perceive that as a potentially something that's going to potentially threaten our life. And so if you don't practice using your frontal lobes, so your conscious thinking, logical brain, to settle down your subconscious mind, then that's where all the anxiety and the sweating and the heart rate is up and all that stuff and the shaking. That's where all of that comes from. That's your amygdala and your limbic system going into fight or flight, because your subconscious brain sees a bunch of a bunch of eyeballs that belong to non-family members staring in your direction, which millions of years ago when we were evolving, that easily could have meant that another tribe was hunting you and going to kill you, which was extremely common during our evolutionary period. And I mean, to be quite honest, with wars, it's still, unfortunately, quite common. So with all of that, that is to say that when you have to present in front of a group of people or perform, when you start getting sweaty and shaky and flushed and all of that, first of all, realize that it's normal. Most people go through that phase in, the first few times, or first, it might even be first few years of presenting and speaking, performing in front of people. It takes time. It's a practice. It's just like anything else. The first time that you got on a bike, I'm assuming you probably didn't just take off and suddenly you're a pro BMX performer like the first time that you get on a bike. Like, no, of course you have to have training wheels. You have to have somebody there helping you to learn how to ride the bike. Then you have to practice riding the bike. Then you have to fall a few times. You have to scrape your knee a few times. You cry. It hurts. You get back on the bike. You keep trying until eventually you can ride the bike on your own, and then you're going. So it's just like anything else. You have to practice it. But just realize that having anxiety in front of people is totally normal. You're not weird. You're not, there's nothing wrong with you. You don't have some kind of strange thing about you particularly that you can't do it. All of that is nonsense. The first time I performed, I was so nervous. Oh my God. I was shaking and I couldn't, even remember the lyrics of the little song I was singing. I sounded horrible. It was a mess. It was a disaster. And I'm sure that, actually, I know because I've looked back at some of the videos, the first easily 10 years of me performing was, I wouldn't say disastrous, but I would say it was extremely questionable as to how entertaining it was. Just out of nervousness and not being able to do multiple things at once. I would have, I'd have to be paying attention to my guitar, my, two hands, the microphone, singing, then there's guitar pedals, then there's lights everywhere, then there's an audience that they're all looking at you, and then there's the band, and I have to pay attention to the band, and then the lyrics of the song, and the sections of the song, and all of that stuff going on, and then the cords and the cables getting wrapped around my feet, and all of this stuff, okay? It was a nightmare for years. But I kept pushing through that. And so now at this point, somebody could hand me a microphone and just say, look, fill up 15 minutes of space, just do it. And I would have no problem doing it at all. And I wouldn't really care if it was good or bad, because I know that ultimately no one is even thinking about me anyways. They don't really care. I'm not that important. Okay. So I really hope this helps. I wanted to do a personal podcast today because I'm working on a very in-depth analysis of, all the stuff that's going on right now with our financial situation and our banks collapsing and all of the craziness that's going on. So until then, remember, each one teach one.
The information provided in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice, investment advice, or medical advice. The host is not a financial advisor nor a medical doctor or licensed therapist. Any financial or medical decisions made based on the information in this podcast are made at the listener's own risk. It is recommended that listeners consult with licensed professionals such as CPAs, financial advisors, and licensed physicians before making any investment or medical decisions. The host and creators of this podcast accept no responsibility or liability for any loss or damages incurred as a result of the information provided in this podcast.